Welcome to the pilot episode of the Flies on the Ball podcast, a podcast where four more men give you their opinions as they meander their way through the treacherous realm that is football. Today we start by talking about the Premier League. We have a few recent fixtures. As you know, there were four yesterday, so the 28th, Palace, Norwich, Southampton, Tottenham, Watford, West Ham, Leicester, Liverpool. James and I were at the Palace game and they dismissed Norwich fairly easily. Southampton, Tottenham seemed like a better game to watch because the Saints were 10 men down for quite a while. One man down for quite a while. And then Watford led West Ham.
10 men down.
10 men down. They only had the goalkeeper. And he did a bloody good job keeping it at 1-1. I mean, props to him, really. And then, Watford lost to West Ham 4-1, but they were 1-0 up for a bit. And Leicester Square, as I call them, Leicester, beat Liverpool 1-0. I didn't watch that game. I was busy... to be honest, I was gaming. To be honest, I have no excuse. And as we record this,
I did watch that, and I'm afraid Liverpool have little excuse either.
Damn. Yeah. I mean, I heard Salah took and missed a penalty. You meant to take and score it. He clearly didn't get the memo, but he has been good this season, to put it mildly. So we all make our mistakes.
But of course, in addition to the fixtures yesterday and Newcastle Man U earlier in the week, a bunch of games postponed again. Arsenal, Wolves, Leeds, Villa, Everton, Newcastle, and I believe... it's just those three, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. Well, there have been so many, I've lost count of which were for which week.
Same. Yeah. There was a lot of honestly, there was a lot of fear that the same was going to happen to the Palace Norwich game tomorrow. So much so that at one point, me and my dad, as we were walking to just go and get food, away from the ground, one guy stopped us to ask, "Is the game off? Is the game off, lads?" No, it's fine. Really, it's fine. The game's on. Don't worry.
Was that the Norwich manager?
No. Unfortunately, it was not Dean Smith. Though I'm sure he was praying for it.
I mean, if you
he was. He made his feelings clear after the game.
I remember just after he was sacked by Villa not long ago, he went on a quick trip to New York for a holiday, and then when he came back and he was interviewed in response to joining Norwich. He mentioned it. I couldn't help but think, you've gone from New York to Norwich.
Oh, dear. Sorry for any East Anglia-based listeners, but, yeah.
Big Apple, it ain't. I mean, we just saw Spider-Man 3, and there was a lot of New York in there.
Indeed.
To be fair, Norwich, it's not the worst job he could have taken, right? I mean, he won't have the expectation to stay in the league.
That's true.
So if he manages to stay in the league, he'll be hailed as you know.
He'd be the next Pep Guardiola. Honestly, he'd be the next Sir Alex Ferguson if he keeps Norwich in the league.
Then again,
based on the performance yesterday.
Then again, regarding expectations, didn't Norwich's sporting director or chief executive a month or two ago say, "I'm angry that everyone thinks we're a yo-yo club and we're doomed to go down. We want to stay up." It's the first time Norwich have explicitly said, "No, we want to stay up." And I found that quite interesting because I thought they just accepted their fate because they don't spend out of their means, which is why they keep bouncing up and down. It's admirable, to be fair, but it means they always go down. And then they sack Farcar. I mean, I get it. He's not. Was it Farcar or Farker?
Daniel Farker. Yeah.
Farker. I'm getting it confused with Lord Farquhar. I think from Shrek. Some of you are going to die, but it's a risk I'm willing to take.
Oh dear. Imagine that as some sort of a pre-game speech from the manager.
I'm pretty sure that's the that's the speech that the Premier League gave to the clubs, right?
That's true. Yeah. I mean, that ties us in nicely with the organisation, or rather lack thereof, surrounding the fixtures. I mean, so many have been called off so late. Do you think the Premier League have a plan?
No.
There we go. I think that there's such a spread. Like some teams have played 19 games and other teams have played down to 15 for Burnley. It's insane.
Everton haven't played since the 16th of December, I think, and Man United similarly hadn't played for a couple of weeks before they faced Newcastle, and you could see it, to be fair.
There was some mad figure about Spurs and the last time they... I don't remember if it was the last time they played away. It might have been away. It was something like 51 days between... Wow. the game yesterday against Southampton, and I don't remember what the last one was, but it was something mad like that, and it was just due to the sheer number of postponements that they've experienced.
How many other leagues in Europe have these postponements? Not
many.
I
don't believe there are many. In fact, I think that the rate of postponements in the other leagues is kind of close to zero.
It is, yeah. I mean, many of them, Germany at least, are playing behind closed doors. I think the Dutch are. We have decided to keep the fans and
of course, at the minute,
call of games.
Yeah, at the minute, the other leagues, at least the other top 5 European leagues, judging from what I've seen on FlashScore, or indeed the lack thereof of what I've seen on FlashScore, I believe they are taking a break at the minute. They are taking a break.
Oh yes, they are. They're taking their winter break, aren't they?
Yep, and not bothering with the congestion of fixtures that we seem to insist upon in English football, which is, of course, being accentuated even more by ongoing postponements due to injuries and, of course, old COVID.
At what point do they just listen to Klopp and others and realise that although the fixture schedule is good for the broadcasters, it's not actually good for the players?
No, it's
not.
It
affects our tournament chances in the summer, but of course the broadcasters are basically in control.
Outside of COVID, I wouldn't say it's a problem. Like, I mean, the winter fixtures have been as they are for forever, right? And there's not really been any major issues. So outside of COVID, I think it's probably fine. But with COVID in context and games being postponed, I mean, it's got to call into question the integrity of the league, right? I mean, it's the lack of transparency as well. Some games are getting called off when it seems like they have players available. Other games are getting called off or aren't getting called off and having to field basically entirely new teams.
Leeds, for example.
Leeds have had the last 2 games called off, but we fielded basically our entire bench against Arsenal was under 23s. There was a 16-year-old on the bench, but it wasn't COVID, so presumably that's why it wasn't called off.
Wasn't it 15? It was a 15-year-old.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, 15-year-old.
Dear God,
Archie Gray.
Imagine that.
Wow.
I know. Like it's crazy. But then you have teams like Burnley who have played 15 games. They're 4 games that they've got to catch them up now. So they're going to go into the next game, coincidentally against Leeds. No, not against Leeds, against Man United tomorrow. Having not played in ages, so they're going to be presumably rusty. I mean, you can make the argument, they're rested, but at the same time, rested versus rusty, right? I mean, teams tend to be worse at the beginning of the season because not played as much. So I guess, it's interesting. And other teams have got all their fixtures out the way, whilst some are going to have very compressed teams later on.
To what extent do you think fatigue, not fatigue, sorry, the lack of game time affected Man United's performance against Newcastle? I don't think.
I was going to suggest that we talk about some of the specific games that we've seen, and first and foremost, let's talk about that wonderful fixture between Newcastle United and Manchester United.
It's brought up some great games in the past, but this one was a bit. I mean, Joe Linton was good, which is not something you normally. He was good in this fixture, and you don't normally say that. Man United were. Apparently they were atrocious. I didn't watch the game. But
I did get the opportunity to watch it, and the first half was it was pretty bad. It was not what you come to expect of. Well, I mean, I don't know at this point. I was about to say it's not what you come to expect of Manchester United, but considering considering their form in not just this season or the last, but just in recent years. We're talking years here.
Yeah,
it just seems like that perception of Manchester United has very much faded away. And
definitely,
I don't quite know what to think of Manchester United anymore.
Do they have an identity? Do you think, or are they still searching for one after Ferguson?
Probably,
because I think Solskjaer did a good job at kind of repairing bits that had been worn down by Moyes. Who was after him? Van Gaal and Mourinho. He did a good job at repairing those issues and kind of restoring some semblance of identity within United. Man U fans can talk about this better than I can, of course, but that was a limit with Solskjaer. It was abundantly clear to anyone, aside from Gary Neville, it seems, that he was out of his depth and should never receive the contract. I mean, there's a reason why Ferdinand's BT Sport comment has been memed to crap.
Yes.
but he was thrown under the bus as well, right? Like, his players weren't performing. I mean, you have players like Ronaldo, who are supposedly some of the best players in the world. Fernandes as well. Maguire. I mean, these are top international stars, and they just play like garbage.
Oh, definitely.
And there's an extent on if the manager can't get the players to play, then it is the manager's fault. But the players haven't improved.
Oh, also the setup.
Ralph.
Well, you can also talk about tactics here, because prior to this season, United under Solskjaer were a very strong counter-attacking team. It allowed them to, use their attacking talent properly and allow Bruno to flourish in midfield. But then Ronaldo arrived, which they didn't plan for. They weren't expecting to buy him.
No.
But because he wanted to leave and it looked like he was going to City, and of course they couldn't allow that, they were forced to buy him, which kind of disrupted the plans. So tactically, Ronaldo brought in a different dynamic. They had to kind of do something around him, but it's knowing that Ronaldo doesn't really press.
Yeah.
He's not a pressing player. And then, of course, as you may have heard, Carrick, and I can't remember the other name. Okay, Solskjaer may have been the manager, but Carrick and the other coaches, they actually dealt with match prep. They got the teams ready for the games.
There was a lot of moaning when he became interim manager.
Yes.
I seem to remember.
And they didn't really improve under him. I didn't see much of a change, although for some reason he did decide to experiment a bit after Solskjaer left.
The thing is, on that point, the thing that I could really gather, and I hope like everyone else gathers as well from the Newcastle game the other day, is that ultimately, Solskjaer has been sacked, and they are hopefully for Manchester United fans at least, hopefully into a new era under Ralph Rangnick and beyond, because obviously he's just an interim manager at the minute.
And then 2 years advisory, yeah.
It is the same team as what they had before with Solskjaer. So there's clearly still some very integral issues there, and or inherent issues, more to the point. And it's gonna take some time. So expecting Rangnick to come in and for Manchester United to suddenly be almost like a title challenging side is ludicrous. That way.
They're quite far off. And
that said, a tepid performance against Newcastle is probably not what they were expecting.
True.
Yeah, I mean, expecting them to win the title just because Ole's gone is obviously that's one end of the spectrum. But at the other end, there's not been any improvement in the players themselves, has there?
No,
really. In that time, sure they had been they're undefeated under Ralph, right? But undefeated and good performances are two different things. Like, did they not struggle against Norwich?
Yes, they really did.
It's not a good look, and I think it's got to come down to the players. They just don't look like they're bothered.
They're lost. I think maybe they have too many leaders, or maybe they don't have a clear voice. Maguire as captain, I think, is a mistake. I mean, Maguire had a very good Euros. He had a really good Euros.
So did Luke Shaw. But
so did Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw last season was superb. Best left back in the league, I think.
He was,
genuinely.
yeah.
He was that good.
He was so good that I even ranked him over Robertson, and I seem a bit embarrassed by that. But
almost sacrilegious. But to be fair,
I know. But
to be fair, he was really good last season. And then they both had a good Euros, and they've both been. I think it's no exaggeration to say they've both been appalling since, especially Maguire, and encapsulated with that Liverpool game where I think it was for the second goal when Diogo Jota scored from a Trent cross. In the build-up to that, Maguire and Shaw literally ran into each other because Maguire had been drawn over to the middle and Shaw had been drawn over right into the middle, leaving United's left flank completely empty and exposed. And Maguire, realising he had to turn to his left, literally ran into Shaw, and then it was chaos really. And neither of those two have been very good recently. And I don't think Maguire is he captain material. It's hard to tell really. He doesn't seem to inspire anyone.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because who takes over the captain's armband if not Maguire in that Man United team?
I'd go De Gea.
True.
Yeah, maybe.
He's reliable and he's trustworthy. I mean, Ronaldo's not really the captain type. He's a leader by doing.
I agree.
I wouldn't say Bruno necessarily, although you never know, it might actually allow him to flourish. But I think Bruno's too temperamental. Exactly, and it brings us on to what his behaviour was like at the Newcastle game. Ronaldo and Bruno were criticised by Gary Neville after the match for being whingers, for the whole team really, for being whingers. Ronaldo just stormed off after the match. Bruno was moaning throughout. Do you think that's down. Well, I don't want to talk about United too much, but I wonder why they were behaving like that. Ragnick's only been there for 2 odd weeks, and he's already annoyed at their performances. They've just been rather insipid. And then, Gary Neville, who seems to ignore or just miss out on some very obvious matters, sometimes comes around with common sense. It's hard how to approach his analysis sometimes.
I think overall, it's a work in progress with Man U.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What do we think about Newcastle, do you think?
I think it's too late this season.
Yeah.
Just a bit too late. But
it depends, of course. Yeah, it depends, of course, of like what happens in the January transfer window, really.
I think there's been definite improvement since Eddie Howe took over.
Yeah. Probably, yeah.
Like I think maybe not in points. I don't know how much their points have improved since he's taken over. But in terms of how they're actually playing football,
oh yeah, definitely. In fact, why did I say probably? They've definitely improved from like just a pure aesthetic point of view. Yeah, we can at least admit that.
Improving from Steve Bruce is like polishing a turd, really.
Poor Steve.
Poor Steve. It's not his fault. He's rubbish.
Steve Bruce. You say rubbish. I mean, it's a terrible brand of football that no one really enjoys watching, right? But he did keep them in the league. And where did they finish last season? Was it around 12th or something? Like, they didn't do too badly, right?
I think it was lower than that. But it's just his winning percentage at Newcastle was about 29%, which is really low. And the football they're playing wasn't that great. He didn't seem to have any idea of what he was doing. He said the same stuff in post-match interviews. And his whole managerial record has been poor. He had a good time at Palace, but then he left early for money.
He did indeed.
Yeah. Just sense the judgment.
They did finish 12th last season, ahead of Wolves,
fair.
ahead of Palace, Brighton, Southampton.
He inherited Benitez's squad, so for a large part of that season, he wasn't really tinkering with it, was he? I don't think he was.
It's interesting. I would normally say too little, too late now at this point. They've got 11 points, right? And they're halfway through the season. They've got 19 games to get out of the relegation zone and then put distance between themselves and the relegation zone. With 5 teams above them, all have games in hand over them. It's like, how many points are going to be picked up there? It's tricky.
Burnley have 4 games in to go, yeah. Newcastle have played 19, Burnley have played 15. Watford have played 17, Leeds 18, Everton and Brentford 17.
Well, I think Burnley are more likely to survive than than either Newcastle or Norwich. Partly because of the games in hand, but partly because this is basically what they do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They scrounge results, basically. So I think they should be fine. But yeah, Newcastle, I think they'll be back up eventually. And they'll be,
You do kind of wonder. Though at the same time, you consider like some other examples across I was going to say across Europe, but really I'm thinking mainly in Germany, where you've had numerous instances of quite big clubs getting relegated to the second division. And certainly in the case of Hamburg, staying there. They've actually stayed there for a couple of seasons. They've been consistently at the top, but then have sort of fallen at the final hurdle. So, I mean, Newcastle obviously do have a lot of money behind them now. In fact, probably the richest club on the planet, am I right?
They're like 10 times richer than Man City or something.
So they have nearly 400 billion, I think.
So they certainly have the resources to get out of the second division quite quickly. But there's no real guarantees. The Championship is a tough division.
You could argue the hardest.
Unpredictable.
It's very unpredictable. That's why, I mean, as a Crystal Palace fan, that's why I really fear going back there, because there's a good chance you'll never come back.
Yeah, I mean, it took Leeds 16 years.
Indeed.
Anyone can beat anyone in that league. It's why you could argue it's actually the best league.
Spectacle-wise, perhaps not.
I get the feeling that Newcastle, like at least Newcastle fans, despite the fact that it is obviously quite a pessimistic time to be a Newcastle fan based on their recent league form, in terms of just the overall context of the new ownership and the potential for them to become a new Manchester City potentially based on the new ownership, I feel there is probably a more significant degree of optimism this time around than I think the last time around when they were relegated, which was that in 2015, something like that?
Yes, I think
it
so.
wasn't long ago, but yeah, there was probably a lot more pessimism back then than there is now, because they were still under Mike Ashley. But yeah, now there probably is like a degree of optimism because of the new ownership and the potential that they could just go straight back to the Premier League and what do you know, they're title winners immediately for the first time in over 100 years or whatever it is.
That would back in.
I mean, it brings in the whole ethics behind it as well, really. But I mean,
a topic, yeah.
It's not. It's nothing clubs haven't done before. I mean, you look at where the money comes from in the teams that have it, and
a topic of discussion for another episode, maybe.
Yeah, but just resource wise, they definitely have the resources to do well, and their squad's not. It's not an atrocious squad, right? They have players that would probably be able to get them out of the championship.
I mean, maybe out of the championship. Though, to be honest with you, I don't know how many. I mean, how many of their current squad do you think would be picked up by other Premier League clubs if they were relegated? So probably St. Maximin and Wilson. I can't think. Actually, Dubravka. I would certainly say Dubravka because he's actually one of the best players I've seen play at Selhurst Park. Funnily enough, he was fantastic.
He is good. Yeah, Carl Darlow, another good keeper.
Yeah, maybe
Jamal Lewis. He's got potential.
Possibly.
But if they're looking to come straight back up, will they sell all the players? I mean, they don't have to, right? So I guess it depends on what clauses the players have in their contracts, how long the players' contracts are left, and what sort of handshakes they can make with them. Like you might have a player that basically says, "Okay, I'll stick with you through this season, but when we get back to the Premier League, I want to be sold to another club."
Yeah.
I think that happened with Norwich last time and with Buendia, right?
Yeah.
So it's tricky. I don't think that they would need to sell all their players.
They don't need to,
no.
They have the money to say, "Nah, stick with us. We'll pay you more and then get you back in the Premier League."
But who would they buy in January? Will they try and go for big stars, or it depends really? Because yes, they've got the money now, but that's no guarantee that they'll use it properly. Because City had the money 10 odd years ago, but they chose the right people for the right places, made good appointments.
Weren't they to begin with a bit more liberal with their spending? So, like for instance, I think the very first signing they got when they're taken over was Robinho.
Yes, it was. Yeah,
which is like bloody hell.
That was insane. Him at City was weird.
Yeah, a bit of a statement signing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can like with the money behind Newcastle now, I can see their current squad being almost utterly revamped within the next couple of years. Because I don't see many of their players sticking around for much longer based on their performances this season.
Oh, definitely not. No, yeah, I think they'll eviscerate the squad and just get rid of so much.
Question is though, when does that happen? Because the problem with bringing players in January for Newcastle in their current position is, will players want to come in? Like your big name signings, right? Are they going to want to come in to a club that may well be in the Championship next season? Because it doesn't matter who you sign. You might not make it out of that relegation zone at this point.
But money.
Yeah, but if a player can go and get a load of money elsewhere, like how much is it going to be worth them going to Newcastle, potentially getting relegated, and then having to fight in another league where they're not developing themselves and they're not going out onto the top shelf, right?
Yeah.
If they're playing in the Championship, so I guess it depends.
Yeah.
Whether they're going to be able to attract the type of players they want to attract, or whether they're going to have to wait until the start of the season when they're back in the Premier League, assuming they get relegated in the first place.
I think they have to be prudent in buying players with a lot of experience. One suggested target was, or is, Tarkowski at Burnley. If Newcastle buy a number of very experienced, competent Premier League players, they have a chance of staying up. But if they just splash their cash on silky wingers from overseas with no experience, then they will go down.
I honestly think one tactic they might go for, I can't say for certain they will do this, but one tactic they might want to go for is looking to get players from clubs around them. So like you suggested, Tarkowski from Burnley, because obviously Burnley, I know that I don't really think Burnley will get relegated personally, but they are in and around that area. And so the one idea would be to I'm going to suggest Rafinha from Leeds, Sam. I'm afraid. But basically, yeah, players from teams like in and around them, just to help them get out of the relegation zone and potentially stay up in the Premier League. That would seem like one way to go about it. I don't know if they will do that, but yeah, I just feel like that would probably be one potential option. The worst thing they could do, though, is to go and get like foreign superstars all of a sudden, because then they basically be doing what so many recently promoted teams are guilty of, is like forming a completely new squad after getting recently promoted, rather than using the one that they got promoted with.
Fulham, for example, spent 100 million the other year.
Case in point.
The best case. Yeah, doing from the start. Really, you just knew. Why did you spend so much on?
I get it.
Revamping or replacing the team that got you up in the first place.
Like, I get it, because I know that there is a fair bit of a gap between the Premier League and the Championship nowadays. So making that leap, you do have to spend. You really do have to spend, but you've really got to be careful, because ultimately, you create so much when you get a team promoted. You create such a harmony between the team, your harmony in the dressing room and stuff. That's not something money can easily buy.
No.
So
I mean, if you look at Leeds' promoted team, or rather who they brought in after they got promoted for their first season in the Premier League last year, or first season back in the Premier League, like they got quite a few players in: Rafinha, Rodrigo, Llorente, Koch, as first team players. So that's 4. They spent a lot of money. But it really was still just supplementing. I mean, the core of the team still pretty much stayed the same, right? You've still got Cooper as your captain and first choice centre back. You've still got Bamford as your point man. You still got Phillips controlling the midfield. It was all like Rafinha, the winger, Llorente and Koch were basically replacements for Ben White, who we weren't getting back.
Yeah.
So we went out. We bought replacement for the players that we were losing. We kept some of the loan players. Like I think Harrison stayed on loan the first season, even though we bought him now. I think Costa we bought, but he was already in the team. So actual new players, ignoring the ones that were replacements, it was really just Rodrigo and Rafinha, right? So yeah, I guess it wasn't a huge amount of increase, but it was a lot of money. It was players that would supplement the squad and were needed, but not just spending on everyone. Yeah, the problem with buying from teams around you is will those teams sell to you? I mean, you can throw a lot of money at them.
Of course, yeah.
But at the end of the day,
I'm talking very much in hypotheticals.
Also, Newcastle have half a season left rather than a full season.
Yeah,
so they need quick, short-term solutions and almost guarantees. Really,
it's a mountain to climb.
Yeah. But it's like, will Burnley sell? Was it Tarkowski?
Yeah, depends on the price. To be fair, I think they might. If it's like 30-40 million, I think they would.
Yeah, but then how much is it worth to stay in the Premier League?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. So
it's like if they sell one of their core players, and it gives them a bigger chance of relegation, that they're going to be financially worse off, right?
Risk fee reward, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. That's the danger if they are looking to take players from teams around them. Like, there's been a lot of rumours about Rafinha leaving in January from Leeds. I don't think he will. I don't think it would be prudent to sell one of your best players during the January transfer window when it looks like you might be dragged into a relegation battle.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense.
No, you don't really sell in January. If you sell, you normally sell fringe players. If you're going to be active in January, you're buying a decent player to help you bolster your squad.
Yeah.
You don't. Yeah, especially if you've got a relegation battle on your hands, you don't sell, especially one of your best players. So yeah, he won't go.
So it's tricky, and I think Newcastle will struggle to get players from the Premier League, especially from teams around them. And then if you're looking at teams at buying players from teams further up the table, well, will those players want to go to Newcastle, where again they might get relegated? It's tricky. You've got to find the right players at the right price at the right time who want to come to you.
If they didn't have hundreds of billions, yeah, it'd be really bleak. But yeah, they'll get up eventually. They'll be back.
Yeah,
definitely.
So we've talked about
we've talked a fair bit about the Premier League.
Recent results and the state of a couple of clubs. Do we want to go on to FPL or do we want to...
I'm happy to start talking about fantasy football a little bit.
Yeah, cool. Because as we're talking, it's Chelsea-Brighton, 0-0 at the moment. I have not had a good week. Like many, I captained Salah, although I did do a free hit because my squad was depleted by COVID. Dear. I've only got 18 points at the moment.
My game week was firmly ruined by Liverpool, I'm afraid.
Yes, sorry about that.
It was going pretty well so far. Like I played both Antonio and Dennis up front, who both scored. I had Guaita and Mitchell playing as well, who obviously got a clean sheet against Norwich. And then I had Captain Salah, Diogo Jota and Trent Alexander-Arnold, and, well, Salah misses a penalty and Leicester score a goal, so never mind.
The only thing that can save my week is I have De Gea in goal, Rudiger, who's playing at the moment, and then I've got 3 City players to play, Cancelo, Bernardo and Foden, the latter of whom is apparently starting, so that's good. I hope I don't want them to destroy Brentford, but for the sake of my game week, and for the sake of my staying at the top of Kevin Keek, our great league, I must require City to batter to death. Them.
Well, considering I only had 8 players who were gonna who might start. Well, I mean, 7 of them have started.
You've done really well, Sam.
And the other one is Ronaldo. I think I've done okay. Yeah,
you've got 42 at the moment, I think.
43.
43, yeah.
43.
Yeah.
That's really good, actually.
That's selfish.
Yeah,
that's selfish, really.
Dennis and Kane up front with Son as my captain. Maddison, who I mean, he got his 3 points, but he's my worst performing player so far.
He's also injured, but 75% chance of returning.
Mitchell and Guaita.
Yeah.
So
you've got Ronaldo left.
Ronaldo left to play, yeah, and Rudiger in playing now.
I hope Ronaldo does nothing.
It's they're against Burnley, and for the sake of trying to keep some points distance, I do hope Burnley lose.
Yeah, I put De Gea in goal for this game week because I don't think Burnley will score. Then again, Man United aren't very good at the moment, so
yeah,
it's true. That said, that they are undefeated in the last few games.
That's true. He's building. That's the thing. That's a positive spin. Definitely, they're undefeated, but they are insipid. Really, they don't.
Yeah,
they just don't look. There's nothing. They look.
They don't.
Wet.
Yeah. So suddenly, Cristiano Ronaldo and Bruno Fernandes. It's weird to say, but they don't seem quite as reliable anymore.
No.
Or at the minute, maybe it's just a little dry spell, but at the minute they just don't look quite as like we did the draft thing not too long ago.
Yeah.
In that I have Bruno Fernandes, Kevin De Bruyne and Harry Kane. There was a point where that actually didn't look that great, which is just ridiculous considering some of the previous seasons. And like in terms of the fantasy team, like just main fantasy team, I've somehow managed to weather the storm a little bit with the number of postponements and whatnot. I don't quite know how, because I'm still in the cup, which is really strange, without having used a single one of the free hits. And I might actually be able to pull it off this week as well, because I've just noticed that my cup rival has got Gundogan in the team, who is not starting. He has suffered from the Pep rotation. So,
yeah. I went out of the cup last week, which was very sad. But it is the FPL. It's been really, the way they've handled the COVID postponements is
been pathetic.
Poor.
It's really not good.
I mean, giving a free hit is something.
Yeah.
But considering you don't know what games are getting postponed. Some are only being postponed 2 hours before they start, and considering you only have until 90 minutes.
Indeed.
90 is really 100 minutes, right? Before the game week starts to make your changes.
Or do you?
Yeah.
Or do you?
Well,
because that what happened to me this week is I was trying to bring in, or actually I think it was the last game week. I was trying to bring in a different forward. I was trying to bring in Neil Maupay, and it was just like it was 2 minutes before the deadline, and then the website crashed on me. And I know that this happened to a lot of other people as well. So just to really add insult to injury, really twist the knife just that little bit more. Because in addition, because like they had the cheek the other week to say that, it's been a bit of a tricky game week. It's been a bit of a tricky game week because of all the postponements. It's like, no, sort out your bloody game, because it's getting to the point now where it's no longer about the fun of the game. Like, it's no longer about the sport. It's just about who's going to catch a bloody virus and postpone their team's game or something.
It's chaotic.
So what solution could they do?
I personally think it would be best to... by the way, Lukaku just scored against Brighton.
Interesting.
I
got rid of him from my team.
That's not Rudiger, so I'm not happy.
I don't know. Was he assisted by Rudiger? That's the big question here. But like on that point, though, I think that the best way forward would be to introduce free transfers for any players that have had their games postponed. So so like for instance, I'm looking in the next week. At the minute, all my players are apparently going to play, but say Everton versus Brighton gets postponed for whatever reason, and so I can't use Demarai Gray. I think the best idea would therefore to be, okay, so for this game week only, players who play for Everton and Brighton, you can transfer out in favour of a player that is playing.
That might affect their max 3 players rule. But these are unprecedented.
Well, I mean,
times.
obviously within the bounds of all the rules and stuff like that. But it's just to ensure that it remains about the sport and it doesn't become this ridiculous. Because I know that fantasy football is inherently unpredictable, but you can predict certain things. So, like for instance, if Mohamed Salah, in the form of his life, is going to play against Norwich, who have a really terrible defence, you can sort of on a probability basis, you can sort of say, okay, there's a good chance that Salah will he will score at the very least.
I would triple captain him if that happened.
You might do that. But when it comes to postponements, there's not much you can predict there. That you can't really. That's not part of the sport. It's not part of the sport, and the fact that it's affecting the game in such a way is just poor on the part of fantasy football. I think
these are strange times, and they aren't willing to be a bit more flexible and adapt. They're being really dogmatic.
It's a bit bizarre, really, because you want to keep engagement in your game, which means you want it to be fun, right? And engaging. So I agree. I think the easiest thing. And it doesn't take much change to the actual structure of the game, right? If a player has their game postponed, you can give them a free transfer. That would be the easiest thing. And it's different because you have for instance, when you have Man City players, you have the unpredictability of whether they're going to be included in the squad. But that's a risk that you accept by getting those players.
Yeah.
The risk of a player getting ill in general is one you also take, but that's a really small risk in most seasons.
Yeah.
In this season, it's a huge risk, and it gets to the point where you can have half your team just disappear. Last minute, you got no free transfers left. You can't use a free hit. You've already used one, or they've not given the new one out, or whatever. And it's just it doesn't really make sense to keep going as if nothing's happening and just give an extra free hit.
Like, fundamentally, it's not fun.
It's not.
It's the bottom line for me.
And it reminds me of the blurb I put for this podcast's anchor site. The path of the football fan is beset on all sides by the decisions of the officials and the rotations of Pep Guardiola. Now, I won't do it in a Samuel L. Jackson voice, but you get the idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Blessed are thee who whatever.
But so you've got that. It's absolutely crazy that they haven't done anything to solve it. Another thing like they could do would be to give more substitutions and a bit more money to buy in a couple extra players.
Yeah.
So that you can have a couple of extra players on your bench. That way, you can diversify your teams a bit.
That's a good point.
Maybe a special COVID sub.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they had it in the Premier League last year, didn't they? 5 subs for a while.
Yeah.
There's talk about some teams wanting them to bring it back. It's something that it's something in a game like FPL. It's something which you can do while keeping it fair for everyone, because everyone starts with the same resources.
Yeah.
It's not like real life where some people are getting more just by virtue of being them. It's everyone starts with the same, and you can make sure everyone has the same.
Definitely, It's just it's a bit frustrating.
I think it's impossible to argue that skill is responsible for you having a well-built team that's not impacted by the COVID postponement.
Exactly.
There's only so much research you can do into form and history before, even COVID affects your chances.
It just,
It's interesting, and I hope that next season. Well, first of all, I hope next season there's no COVID issues. I hope it's all over by then. But we were here last year, so
I hope we solve climate change by next season. But
I hope for world peace. But
come on, James, don't be selfish.
I mean, Qatar are going to cool the air, aren't they? They're going to pump air conditioning into the air just to keep their stadiums cool.
Oh, good
for the World
God! Flipping heck.
We haven't even started on FIFA. To be fair, we've just begun. So.
Yeah, well,
corruption. Am I right? Awful.
Yes.
Let's tackle that old chestnut.
What's everyone's teams looking like then for the coming week or coming game week?
Because I did a free hit this week. I used free hits, so my team is going to go back to. I'm going to have Ramsdale in goal. I haven't made a change yet. Ramsdale's playing City, so I might get rid of him. And then at the moment, I've got Livramento. But he's got a knee injury, so he's got a 75% chance of playing. Then I've got Rudiger, but he's playing Liverpool. I've got Cancelo, I've got Trent. Then my midfield four at the moment, Foden, captain, Bernardo, Smith Rowe, Son. Then up to Antonio and Dennis. I might get rid of a City player. But then again, Ramsdale, because Foden's going to be affected by the Guardiola Pep roundabout.
Old Pep roulette or whatever.
Pep roulette, exactly. So I may have to either get rid of him or Gallagher I might bring back in, but he's ill, so he's got a 50% chance of playing against West Ham. But Ramsdale, is it worth getting rid of Ramsdale? Because he's not going to keep a clean sheet against City, is he?
It's unlikely, yeah.
Although Arsenal have been very good. I suppose, do Arsenal have all their players? I know they were missing, was it Tomiyasu?
Yes, they were.
In defence against Norwich. But when they've got their whole defence in, I mean, they're good.
They are decent. They are. Yeah, they're not bad actually. They're improving.
That said, they did concede. Was it 4 against Liverpool?
Yeah, they
conceded
did.
5 last time they played Man City. Granted, they were playing with 10 men.
Yeah, I seem to remember they don't tend to do that well against Man City. Mind you, most people don't. So
it's a habit, really.
Yeah, it's tricky. I've already got 4 yellow exclamation marks and a red exclamation mark.
Oh God!
For the next game
my bench is 2 reds and a yellow.
Yeah, and that's before COVID even starts. Postponements even start happening.
Yeah.
What's your formation? Is it 4-4-2, 3-4-3?
Mine's 3-4-3. So I've gone for Guaita in goal over Ramsdale because I rate Guaita's chances against West Ham versus Ramsdale's against Man City. He was actually playing in the game against Norwich yesterday, so he seems to be back as well rather than Jack Butland. Back three of Cancelo, Alexander-Arnold, and I've also gone for Livramento. I don't know how useful that's going to be, but I figure against Newcastle that's maybe not so bad.
But he is at yellow exclamation.
He is
mark.
indeed, yeah.
75% chance of playing, to be fair, and Southampton are at home.
It's just, if there is a chance that he plays against Newcastle, I mean, a Newcastle team potentially without both St. Maximin and Wilson, that's tasty, from a defender's point of view at least.
True.
In midfield, I've gone for Smith Rowe. I've also got Damari Gray and Jota, but then I've also got Salah, who I've captained. I still don't feel... I know last week was terrible, or last game week. Actually, we're still on that game week, aren't we? So this game week, he was not that great. Missing a penalty and not doing anything else. So, blanking, even though I captained him and everything. But I still feel like leaving him captained because I still am not... I don't want to suddenly say, oh, well, he's finished, isn't he? Oh,
you can't bet against
Hamid
him
Pala,
this season.
He's finished, as Twitter would say.
Is he not going to AFCON?
Not yet, after the Chelsea game, I think.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Interesting. I've not got a single Liverpool player in my team.
No.
How dare you?
I know. It's mad.
And then also up front, I've put Watkins, Antonio, and Dennis. That's my team, pretty much.
Fair.
I did have Liverpool players, and I got rid of them recently. I think last week.
Were you drinking?
I don't know, but it worked because Liverpool lost. So I don't know.
It turns out to be a masterstroke. That.
To be fair, you've got 43 points this week, so yeah, an inspired choice.
I know. So we'll see. But yeah, I need to do something about. I've got one free transfer available, and I've got 5 players who look like they won't be playing before we even talk about COVID.
Maybe do a free hit.
Yeah, I might have to, but I used a free hit 2 weeks ago.
So did I.
It's a bit crazy.
I haven't used
both of mine up.
So I wonder if I should use mine. Yeah, I don't know.
Could also wildcard, of course.
Yeah, true. I'm going to leave mine for later. I want to try and sustain myself for as long as possible, and then if things are going sour,
we're at that stage of the season, aren't we? Where there's going to be a new wildcard, isn't there?
Yeah, it's come in already, I think.
Oh, very nice. I like the sound of that.
Juicy.
So it's interesting. So we all are not having fun with the game, and yet are still very much engaged with the game.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's addictive, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably why they've not changed it, because people are still playing it.
They know that their target audience will carry on playing. I mean, I started in 17-18 when we were in our 3rd year at uni, and I won our league basically because I had Salah and De Bruyne on all the time.
Yep.
And then the last few years, I started poorly and went, no, fuck this. So I gave up. And then this season, I decided, no, I'm going to try and start well and see what happens. So I read an article in The Athletic, followed their advice, and in my first week, I got over 100 points. And since then, I've gone, right, I am sticking with this. This is a proper commitment now. I'm going to carry on
for me,
and see if I can do well.
For me personally, it allows me to just track other teams pretty effectively. I mean, like, obviously, I can still do that like on Match of the Day and stuff, but at least with this, yeah, it just gives you another way of tracking the progress of other teams and particular players. So, like, I know, for instance, that Emmanuel Dennis is quite a form striker at the minute because he's a bloody valuable asset in fantasy football.
Yeah, I think most of us have him, if not half of us in our league. I think
it is. I think it is an interesting game for engaging with Premier League football beyond the game itself, right? Because it makes you want to look up these other matches, these other players, see how they're doing, so that you can do well.
Yeah.
And I knew very little about the Premier League and the teams in the Premier League last year. I think that was my first year on FPL. Obviously, as a Leeds fan, I was more watching the Championship before that, and not really paying too much attention to the Premier League. So I came in knowing very little and ended up winning our little league.
Bit of a boast.
Yeah, humble brag. Not so humble brag. And then this year, thinking I know more about it, I've gone and tanked, and I'm halfway down, and the people below me are the people who have stopped playing.
Basically, well, I might as well have stopped playing because some of them have been really poor.
Yeah, but no, it's interesting. I find it helps me engage more with the wider game, the sport, like teams beyond the teams I'd normally watch.
Yeah.
To what extent do you think FPL is affecting tribalism? Because prior to FPL, you didn't want another team to win, really. You didn't want your rival to win, certainly. Yeah. But nowadays, if your rival is a good player, you'll probably have him in your team. So if they do well, you'll be thinking, on the one hand, damn, they've done well. But you'll also be thinking, that's good. That's good for my team.
Yeah, like, for instance, I've got Mikel Antonio up front. He's playing Crystal Palace. So do I really want him to score? Not really, no. But at the same time, in fact, I've just realised I've got both Mikel Antonio and Vicente Guaita playing, which is not ideal.
But yeah, I'm wondering, to what extent is FPL, maybe in the long term, maybe its effects can't be felt for a while, but to what extent is it affecting the polarising, the nature of English football, at least in the Premier League, the tribalism, the divisiveness? Because suddenly you have a vested interest, albeit a small one, in how other teams are playing.
Well, yeah, I guess I suppose if it is affecting that, then is that a bad thing? I mean, does it encourage more? I guess open and friendly conversations between rival fans, or is it just that it sort of dulls the loud, vocal minority of football hooligans that were previously all over the place because they were the ones that were reported on, and now everyone's on Twitter and stuff talking about FPL instead?
Yeah, possibly. It's hard to tell, really. And how do you measure these effects? Do you see it in football chants at games? Is it online? Or is it both? Probably a mixture of both and stuff like that. Is it levels of violence, and as a result of which the extent of police cordons and the police presence at major games? That hasn't really changed, to be fair. but maybe that's because the police don't think they should change it. Yeah, maybe it's a long-term thing, or maybe I'm just trying to think of a TED Talk one day.
Just getting it out there early.
Is football done?
Football is finished.
Is football? Question mark.
Is football. That's the thing. There's a lot, especially you hear it, especially you buy the Sky pundits and Match of the Day and stuff. They talk about how they love football because it's so unpredictable, which it is in individual games, right?
Yeah.
But the league itself isn't. No. It is getting less predictable with time, right? It's especially the top, like you know, generally speaking, who the top 6 teams are going to be in a given year.
Like
it's rare to see otherwise.
Well, the Premier League is unpredictable and interesting relative to the other European leagues, because especially the Bundesliga, you could say it's a dead league because Bayern has dominated it since its inception.
I was going to bring up
the last 8 or 9. Yeah. They won the last 9, I think, Bundesliga titles, and then Juve won 8 or 9 Scudetto in a row. Spain is dominated by Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Yeah.
Paris Saint-Germain dominate Ligue 1. But the Premier League, you have slightly more diversity.
That said.
That said. Relative to the other leagues, it's more interesting. Hence, I think, why so much broadcasting money goes into the Premier League. But it's still dominated by a select few.
In particular, one.
One at the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'm hoping
I'm
hoping that Guardiola's departure in 2023 will witness kind of a stutter in City's progress or attempts to achieve success, because I genuinely think Guardiola and City have become intertwined.
Yeah,
their identities have become, because that's the manager Guardiola is. He wants the club to be singing to the same tune. That is to support his style of play. So when he leaves, will there be a new culture? Will there be a culture change? I don't know. I'm hoping, really, because it's boring if one team dominates. I mean, we all
yeah. But if the Premier League is labelled the most interesting league and the most entertaining league in the world because it's unpredictable, and yet we're falling into this trap of really, you've got Man City in a league of their own, and Liverpool and Chelsea, really, who are up there with them, but you know, they have to take advantage of Man City's failings, right? More than anything else. So should there be more of an interest in keeping in making the league less predictable? Like when Leicester won, no one expected it.
No,
it absolutely madness. No one expected Leicester to go and win the league. It made it way more interesting. But then there seems to have just been a well, we don't really care that there's a few teams that are winning the league all the time and sort of falling back.
To be fair, if you look at the last 40 odd years, has there been much diversity? In the 70s and 80s, Liverpool dominated. In the 90s and noughties, United dominated. This last decade, it's been City and Chelsea, the money clubs, basically, the new money clubs. Has there ever been... There hasn't been a lot of variety since the 60s, I'd say. The 60s and early 70s was the last time you could look at a list of winners and think, well, it's almost chopping and changing almost every year. I think for the last 40 odd years, English football has been dominated by one club or another.
It's sort of an inevitability of just like how leagues in not just this country but beyond are structured. It's just that's just the way it's always going to be. It is like in complete contrast to like what they've got in America, where it's mostly franchise systems, and like in that case, particularly in NFL, you seem to get different championship winners almost every season. It seems.
Yeah. It makes for more variety. But on the one hand, I don't know, I like the idea that one team could dominate based on excellence, not based on money, based on quality, because that's what you had in the past. It wasn't necessarily massive financial budgets that separated Liverpool from the rest, and then later United from the rest. Whereas nowadays, Chelsea and City, they do well, but it's because they've had massive injections of cash money, and that's not very cash money.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we see in 5 years' time Newcastle dominating the league, like,
I'll be laughing.
Everyone expects that, right? But everyone expects it, and it just seems to be let's see what Newcastle do with all this money. We expect them to go up there, and it just seems kind of, well, we expect teams to do well only because they have money, and we expect teams that don't have money to not achieve. So it's why upsets are so interesting to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
Even in individual games, and it makes individual games interesting, knowing anyone can beat anyone.
Yeah,
but
it's partly why the championship is so good.
Yeah, the fact that a team can go and beat Man City doesn't change the fact that Man City are going to win the league, or like last season. This season, it's, I mean, they're 6 points clear, but 6 points is not a whole lot, right?
Well, it's quite I can't see City dropping enough points.
Well, have you played? Have Liverpool played Man City twice this season?
No, Liverpool and City have played each other once at Anfield, 2-2 draw, where Salah scored, in my opinion, the goal of the season. And Chelsea and City have played once at Stamford Bridge. City dominated.
Well, there you go. If Liverpool can beat Man City,
hopefully,
then
you'll need Chelsea to do it as well.
That changes to. Yeah, well, that changes to 3 points then between, right, and then it only takes one.
But
recent history
says that City, when they have a lead, don't lose it, which is annoying. You'd need a massive COVID sweep to just knock them out for a few weeks or something.
Something major, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think COVID Man City is probably one of the very few teams that COVID is unlikely to hurt too much, right?
Despite Foden and Grealish clubbing, which is quite annoying.
Yeah.
Actually,
but yeah, I don't think City will do well in Europe again. I don't know why. They just have. There's a thing they have in Europe. They got to the final last year, yes, but I think they've peaked in Europe.
Interesting.
Maybe I'll eat my words, but there's something. Maybe it's a mental block. It's partly down to Guardiola overthinking it sometimes, but they just can't get over the line.
Yeah,
and I can see that happening again.
You know, you mentioned about the sort of unpredictability about the Championship. Like even that seems to be sort of diminishing nowadays, which is a real shame. So because right now I'm looking at the Championship table. Bournemouth,
is it Bournemouth
top? Yeah, Bournemouth at top. Fulham just behind them. Blackburn, interestingly, at third. But then just behind them is West Brom.
So the teams that went down last season, basically.
Yeah, and not far behind them is Huddersfield. So a team that was in the Premier League not too long ago.
Wouldn't mind seeing them back up, to be fair.
I know, but I mean, you get what I mean, though. Like, there does seem to be almost this, because like among the 3 teams that were promoted from last season, you had Norwich and Watford, who were in it just the season prior, or like 2 seasons prior. You had Brentford, of course, which was really, really amazing. That was, but aside from that, it just seems like that we are kind of getting the same teams almost, that they are going to this sort of purgatory where they're between the Championship and the Premier League. Not good enough for the Premier League, but
it does seem
parachute payments have been very influential there.
Yeah.
Once you've got up once, then you're going to get like 120 odd plus over the next few years. So that gives you a bit more of an advantage over other clubs in the Championship.
Oh, also I just checked Rudiger got booked.
No. But yeah, no. I mean, you're right. It is you can predict the Championship to the extent that you expect the teams that go down to be the teams at the top. But then if you look at Sheffield United, they got relegated last season.
Yep.
They're down in 11th. They're not up at the top.
No.
I think they'll be going back up slowly though, given parachute payments. If that's if they use the money properly. Of course, it does hinge on competence as well.
Then Barnsley, who unexpectedly were, I think unexpectedly anyway, really were in the top 6 last year, now in the relegation zone, above only Derby, who have had 21 points. They've
had quite the season, yeah.
Poor Wayne.
Both on and off the field.
So there's huge there's huge changes in the table each season. You expect the teams that are relegated from the Premier League to be up at the top, and you expect the teams that have just been promoted to be near the bottom. But it doesn't always pan out like that. Like you probably wouldn't really expect in today's world to see Man United, even playing as they are, finish bottom half of the Premier League table, right? But then you can get Sheffield United finishing the bottom half of the Championship table after just being relegated down.
Because the Championship's a cauldron, really. You're not going down into safety. It's not like a trampoline. You're not guaranteed to go back up again.
No.
It's chaos down there.
Teams fight for their lives in the Championship, right? That's part of why it's so chaotic.
Yeah.
Because you want to get promoted out, you don't want to get relegated down. Whereas in the Premier League, there seems to be a lot of teams that are sort of settled in the fact that they're like, yeah, we're in the Premier League. Yeah. We're not going to push for those top spots because we know that we can't get there. We just want to stay safe.
There's more realism and comfort, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I guess adds to that predictability.
I knew an Everton fan who that was talking to me about that very point, and like saying that at this point Everton is pointless FC. So no promotions, no relegations, no trophies, just sort of drifting in mid-table in the Premier League. And that is pretty bleak, but you can understand why clubs do it, because like Crystal Palace is sort of falling into that trap as well, of just becoming this, right, let's just survive so we can survive for another season sort of club.
To be fair, I think
say that, but this year they look to have been fighting.
Somewhat, yeah. Like, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to try and make that step up to, get something a bit more. But unfortunately, it is very easy to fall into that sort of trap.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's because you see teams like Aston Villa and Leeds who are teams that do try and push, and it's obviously not going very well in for Leeds this season. But they're not. They don't want to just sit there. Whereas, like you said, Everton have just sort of drifted.
I'm sure Everton
Crystal
really
Palace
wants to
pushing.
make a step up as well. I mean, consider the amount of money they've spent on the squad in recent years. Something like 500 million or something.
Everton has spent about $500 million in 5 odd years.
And I remember it's a risk, right?
Yeah, they spent loads of money on multiple number 10s.
Yeah.
Like Klaassen from Ajax. They bought loads of the same player.
Like Gylfi Sigurdsson.
Gylfi, yes. Gylfi Johnson is my hero, Sigurdsson. Yeah.
So it's a risk that
really
that might not pay off.
No. And it's also, club history does come into it, because Everton have a rich history, especially in the 80s. They have like 9 league titles, similar number of FA Cups, but they haven't won a trophy since 1995. And under Moyes, they were really good, but when you look back, no trophies, but considering where they've been since he left in 2013, they've just...
I'm sure they wouldn't mind those days, honestly.
They really wouldn't mind those days back, would they? Because they were challenging top 5 under him.
Yeah.
And whereas Palace, meanwhile, prior to 2013, had been in the top flight for 4 years in a row on 3 separate occasions.
Mm.
But were kind of like a yo-yo club in that they went up, but they'd always go down. Not like Norwich and going up, down, up, down, up, down every other year or so.
But similar.
But yeah, you could argue that this is Palace's best ever time.
It's almost, being in a golden period, really.
Yeah. I think that kind of perspective might be lost. But then again, when you're in the league for after a certain period of time, you kind of go, right, why can't we keep looking up?
Yeah. And I think, West Ham, right?
Yeah.
They've been really pushing the last couple of years. They've been doing an amazing job.
They have they're very ambitious fans in the club, despite not winning anything for quite a while. But they just remember their days of when they won a few FA Cups in the 70s and 80s, I think. And of course, they claim they won the World Cup in '66. But yeah, they have got a good team up this year, and I'm pleased with David Moyes. To be fair, I'm pleased that he's doing well. Apparently, after his recent poor stints at other clubs, he took some time to just do some homework and try and improve himself as a manager.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so he's
seems to have paid off.
It's clearly it's clearly paying off, and I do wonder whether West Ham will how far they'll go in the Europa League. I don't think they'll get maybe even 5th place in the Premier League. They've got a lot of potential, but the quicker they get Ogbonna back, I think the stronger they'll be. I don't know how long he's out for. But yeah, they don't have a very strong squad. They've got a good first 11, but too many injuries and then they'll be in trouble. Whereas Arsenal have a bit more strength. Tottenham too.
Yeah. Squad depth. I mean that's what it comes that's money, right? That's money and also managers to an extent who want big squads or don't want big squads. Like I think Pep would quite happily add more players and keep having more players to add to his rotation. Well, whereas some managers wouldn't necessarily want that.
You know, Guardiola has a lot of resources when he can spend 100 million on a player and not play him that much.
Yeah,
you can afford to.
Yeah.
Other clubs wouldn't be. If the other clubs paid 100 million for one player, he'd be in charge of he'd be starting every game really. But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, you could look into the Grealish situation anyway for a variety of reasons. I don't think he's got the right temperament, at least at the moment, to do what Guardiola wants him to do, which is press, defend. Because if you work in a Guardiola team, you have to do everything at 100%, whereas Grealish likes to just go forward and win a few fouls. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Foul on Grealish.
I think he's really good. Foul on Grealish, yeah, as we say.
I mean,
I think he's
you
really
don't
good.
get sold for 100 million if you're not good, right?
Yeah, but he is getting... his ability to control the ball at his feet and just keep it within his... or keep it stuck to his feet and just swerve around and traverse not like tight corners. It's really good and really impressive. It's why he gets so many fouls, because he just uses his body really effectively to get between you and the ball, thereby getting a foul. But
and a bit of exaggeration.
And of course, he does dive occasionally. They all do, really.
Well, yeah, I mean that's another thing with the league, isn't it?
But yeah, he's who knows if I'm sure he'll come good, but he has to work harder.
Well, being a good player doesn't necessarily mean you will be good in a set squad or playing in a set style.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, as they say.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, look at Kane. He's I think probably one of the best strikers in the world. So they say, right? But you wouldn't know that looking at him this season.
Oh, I mean, that's definitely a mental thing as well, though, because he clearly wants to leave, and then Tottenham, just ignore that, and then brought in Espirito Santo, who I think was he seventh or eighth choice? I mean, note to self: don't pick someone who's seventh or eighth choice for a job. And then they get Conte. I mean, United must be a bit disappointed if they were. Well, Gary Neville keeps saying Conte wasn't the right man for United, but who was?
Well, who wants the job?
Yeah, I mean,
long term. I'm still surprised they got Ralph Rangnick coached though.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced Rangnick is gonna get them to where they want to go. I think he'll help.
No,
but I'm still not sure.
I think it depends on the players.
Yeah, because he may be a really good coach, and his influence on footballing philosophy and management is second to none, really. But he's got a problem child of a squad there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's actually it's been an interesting season so far. I think there's been a lot of unexpected things happening.
On and off the field,
yeah. Yeah, on and off the field, definitely. It has. I'm interested to see where it goes in the second half of the season.
I hope City don't just run away with it, but
it is looking likely.
It is looking likely, but I think it would be unjust. I would like to see a tight title race, even if it is just between 3 teams or 2 teams, even.
For a while, we thought there would be a 3-team race, but now, now it looks like it's down to 1 horse. As long as they don't win the Champions League, I'm not going to be too despairing of the state of English football. But we are producing good talent, and the City Academy is responsible for that in part. You've got Sancho, Foden, and now the new English kids coming up in the City squad. For all their damage to the integrity of the Premier League, they are producing quality English talent, which is helping us improve in Euros and World Cups, because England can. Well, we do have a history of being rubbish at all the main sports we invented, which brings me on to the Ashes. But I don't want to start a rant on that.
Well, okay, so we've talked about who we expect to win the league, and I think we all expect Man City to win the league. Who do we think? So I think we all expect Norwich.
Speaking of which, Man City just scored.
Who was it?
It looks like it was Phil Foden.
Please, because he's in my team, and that would be delightful.
It was a De Bruyne assist.
See, that's the thing. I don't want City to win the league, but Foden scores, and I'm yes, he scores.
So, who do we expect to get relegated? If we expect Norwich to get relegated, who do we think goes with them?
Newcastle, I think.
Watford.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's contingent on what Newcastle do in January. It's not guaranteed. Yeah. Watford possibly. Leeds should be fine. It depends, Sam, how many players are back and when?
Good question. We don't know. Phillips is expected to be out until February now.
Shit.
So, and he's obviously probably one of our most influential players. Bamford could be back for the Burnley game.
That's good. Because are you going to buy anyone? Are Leeds going to buy
last time he was back for 22 minutes and then got injured in this celebration after he scored. So, what do you know? I don't know if we will buy anyone in January. I would expect us to buy. I would hope we buy someone, but I mean, like Bielsa says, you can't just buy a player. You've got to buy a player who is going to improve your squad.
Yeah.
And you've got to find them at a price you can afford in the January window when that is way more difficult.
Yeah, and Newcastle have to do that on a larger scale as well.
Yeah. I think Burnley could be in trouble. It depends. They've got a lot of games in hand, but games in hand don't necessarily pan out. And they could have to play them all in a short space of time.
Yeah.
So
Watford, I think, maybe maybe the third, because I don't think Ranieri has enough of an effect. Then again,
no.
He's got
5 straight defeats.
5 straight defeats, is it? Oh, I haven't. Damn, I didn't really think about that quickly. Oh yeah, they're not doing well. Even though they've got some good players, I'm impressed by Dennis. But yeah, maybe 2. Yeah, I can see it being Norwich, Newcastle, and Watford.
Yeah. I'd probably say the same.
I think possibly, depending on what Newcastle do in January, and depending on how Burnley's game in hands go, I reckon it'll be Norwich and Watford. I just don't know whether it'll be Newcastle or Burnley. Anyway, that is all we have time for today. So thank you for tuning in to the Flies on the Ball podcast pilot episode. We will see you next week. Goodbye.